Shall we begin? Let's begin now. Let's begin now.
This is not a drill.
Repeat, this is not a drill.
Is that all you got?
Let's begin now.
What up? Oh, for sure.
Hello everybody,
How are you all? I hope you are all well. It's an early one today, isn't it? I'm live earlier than I normally am. That's because I've got a lot to do, basically. I've got a hell of a lot to do. And I wanted to go live yesterday, but I couldn't prepare for this enough because there's so much I want to talk about with regards to everything that's going on in the world at the moment. I'm live on TikTok over there, by the way. So if you see me looking over there off camera, that's because I'm on the TikTok on my phone. And yeah, I'm obviously live to everybody else. So I need to talk. Let me just sort my levels out because I think my levels are off here. I think they are anyway. I think that's a bit better. I think you can hear me properly. Okay. All right. I think that's okay. All right. Sound is fine. Say in the chat. All right. Let's find out what we want to talk about then, because, like I say, I've gone live early today. I'm not necessarily prepared, but we shall get through it, can't we?
A lot.
All right. So, you've heard me say, if you've followed me for any real period of time, social media or anywhere that I publish, that I'm not trying to say here that I'm getting everything right. I'm not. Nobody can get everything right, can they? Nobody can be right about everything. Even the smartest people in the world are not right about everything. And I've always said that I'm trying here. I'm an honest actor, and I'm trying to find out what the truth is. I'm trying to get to the truth of things. And unfortunately, when you're that unfortunately, it's very difficult to get to the stage where you can have a big platform whilst doing that. You get silenced, and you face the sort of censorship that is happening to social media right now. So if you didn't have a big enough platform before this censorship happened over the last few years, you kind of missed the boat, unfortunately. And that's what happened to me. I'm not bitching and whining about this. I'm just getting on with it and trying to do what I do, because I know that really what I'm doing here is just documenting a period in history that's absolutely crazy, isn't it? Somebody with a big platform, fortunately in this country, is saying the same sort of things as me and trying to get to the truth of it, and that's Russell Brand. And they come after him in a big way. He's faced 2 smear pieces in The Independent recently, both of which were bogus. To what point there where he felt the need to address this in one of his latest videos. I think this video was on Ukraine, but it could be on the vaccine or the WEF or anything like that. But it's an overarching thing that he says here that I think it's worth highlighting. Take a listen.
I've made a lot of mistakes. I've been wrong many times. But I'm beginning to think I'm right about this. The mainstream media is not your friend. The culture is not your friend. The government is not your friend. Big business is not your friend. They are operating collegiately in unison to create a set of systems that are beneficial to them and disadvantage you. I've made a lot.
Doesn't that sound like everything that you and I believe in? Doesn't this sound like, well, hold on a minute, they're trying to paint a different picture here of reality than what really is happening. Take a listen to it again. It surmises, I think, what is going on here, especially with the media. They're not our friend.
I've made a lot of mistakes. I've been wrong many times. But I'm beginning to think I'm right about this. The mainstream media is not your friend. The culture is not your friend. The government is not your friend. Big business is not your friend. They are operating collegiately in unison to create a set of systems that are beneficial to them and disadvantage you.
I believe that to be true. And in fact, if you go to my YouTube channel, and it's the first time you've been there, you could see the video at the top that I did, I think 3 years ago, where I say that. I end it with, I do this because our media are fake news. They move like a flock of birds evading a predator whenever they're looking at a story. It's quite pathetic. They never look at the big picture or explain to people what the big picture is. Well, that's something that I'm going to hopefully highlight a little bit today. Because the latest over in Ukraine, coming out of Ukraine about this President Zelensky guy. He's a puppet! It's, well, look for yourself. President Zelensky has suspended 11 political parties in Ukraine over Kremlin collusion claims. He suspended 11 parties. Curiously, none of these parties that he suspended are the ones that are neo-Nazi. Just the socialist ones. One of them has like 10 seats in parliament. It's like the second biggest party. I mean, does this sound like a democracy to you? President Zelensky suspends 11 political parties in Ukraine over Kremlin, quote, collusion claims, including one led by the father of Putin's goddaughter, as he signs a decree merging all national TV platforms into TV channels into one platform. He's merged them all into one platform. Dictators do this, not democracies. This is what we charge Putin with doing, and rightly so. When Putin does it, we condemn it, but this is seemingly going even further. The Ukrainian government has outlawed 11 opposition parties with links to Russia, they say. Oligarch Viktor Medvedchuk is the leader of one of the biggest of the 11 banned parties. Medvedchuk is so close to the Kremlin that Putin is his daughter's god. Okay. Pro-Russian party leader was imprisoned by Ukraine in 2021 for treason. But the media here of, you can see they're painting it as good somehow. That's the, that's what they're trying to make out here. Oh, look, one of them was even Putin's goddaughter. Can you see? This is who Zelensky is. It's a puppet. This is him. This is a video on TikTok. You can go and see it. Zelensky is a puppet, 2014 compared to 2022. Look at it. That's him on. That's the same person, apparently. What is going on here? How can you have that transformation in 8 years? So, people have started, looking at things a little bit deeper. And trying to figure out who this guy is, who the media right now are lionising and calling an amazing hero. We'll get to that in a bit. This is how they used to talk about him. This is the BBC, 2019. This is before he became president. This is 3 minutes long. I'm going to play all of this for you. Please watch. This is the BBC. Don't believe me here. Believe the BBC and what they used to say about Zelensky and how they used to talk about it.
Здрасте.
Василий Петрович Голобородько?
Да.
Доброе утро.
Господин президент.
Привет, как дела? Серьезный день, ребята. Как настроение? Класс? Це не фейк, і я дуже серйозно відношусь до нашої країни, до життя кожної людини.
И вот здесь, понимаешь, теперь, они заставляют детей в будки ваши, строить. Знаешь, почему у нас жизнь собачья? Да потому что мы свой выбор с тобой начинаем в будках. Понятно? А выбирать-то не из двух пи***цев выбираем меньше. И так 25 лет подряд. Ты знаешь, что это есть?
Да, при решении этого вопроса будет учитываться специфика.
Уважаемые журналисты,
Я прошу прощения, я не готов к этой пресс-конференции. Как совместить физкультуру, спорт, если хотите, изучение украинского мовы. Первая причина, конечно же, они хотели бы видеть в президентах такого человека, как Василий Голобородько, с такими, самое главное, моральными ценностями. А второе...
So for those of you on YouTube and whatever, you can probably see my lips moving. I'm just talking to the TikTok people over on the left and just trying to, say what's going on. So yeah, if you think I'm muted on the screen, I am, but it's only because I'm talking to TikTok. You just read what's going on, okay?
Конечно же, это ответ всему политическому истеблишменту. Люди хотят что-то новое.
А я тут ни при чем. Перестаньте. Мы же все понимаем, что это твой человек. Нет, я был уверен, что Голобородько – это твой человек. Ясно. Если не твой и не мой, значит, это человек Рустема Ашотовича. Господа, клянусь, я не имею к Голобородько никакого...
Много всего нового научиться. Посмотреть, как дышит собака.
Я обіцяю вам піти в президенти України. І одразу виконую. Я іду в президенти України. Давайте зробимо це разом. З Новим роком.
Для того, щоб Україна була об'єднана, щоб Україна була захищена, щоб безпека України не ставилася під питання. Прийшли до висновку, що цілісність України и едность.
Я никакая не игрушка в руках Коломойской. Не был бы игрушкой, честно говоря, в руках ни одного из этих людей.
If you're a man of principles,
Yes.
why are you working for a man who the anti-corruption authorities say has stolen all this money from the people of this country?
Все каналы у нас принадлежат олигархам. Все крупные предприятия принадлежат этим группам. Получается, что мы все люди в Украине, 40 миллионов людей без принципов, мы все работаем на этих предприятиях. Или теперь весь юмор будет про меня? Да?
Про вас.
Какие вы сволочи. Ладно,
So as you can see there, they're changing their tune, aren't they? The media, as to how they present him, and they're saying there he's the puppet of a billionaire. The BBC are even suggesting, and that was just 2019, because of the TV channel that made this show to be the great reality TV show that it was, like a reality. And then obviously his presidency was like a reality TV show, and he had all that free publicity really from, well, an oligarch in the country. So that's how the BBC used to talk about him. And then he won election. He got all that praise back there before the free election, but he won the election. And then, within just a few months of winning the election, well, this is the BBC again, May. Zelensky's Ukraine, why the comic's dream of transformation may be over. Within months of him winning the presidency, the presidency, the BBC were declaring that it was basically almost over. There was a euphoria in the centre of Kiev a year ago, this article says, as the new president was inaugurated. This article was from May 2020, just after Zelensky, his puppet, won the presidency. It's a year since the Ukraine's best-known comedian was sworn in to be as president. Is this 2021, actually? No, it's May 2020. Zelensky won by a landslide and on the back of bold promises to reform the country and end the war of attrition in eastern Ukraine. Neither of those has happened yet, but the first 12 months in the job have been eventful, and according to latest polls, he remains remarkably popular. Like I say, this is back in 2020. Got some figures there on him. Internationally, President Zelensky is a puppet. Has had a year to remember. He found himself at the centre of a scandal that led to the impeachment of Donald Trump. Do you remember? That happened. Then there was a furore that followed Iran shooting down of a Ukrainian plane. At home, he's won praise for prisoner swaps that have brought the high-profile Ukrainians who were being held in Russian jails. The Ukrainian leader still has more work to do to bring back prisoners held in Russian jails. COVID-19 has so far been kept under control in Ukraine, perhaps due to a very early decision to lock down. No, perhaps not. BBC, that's pure speculation there. But in the past few months, there's been a definite shift in emphasis, they say. The reformers that accompanied him to power have been pushed out amid claims that the idea of really shaking things up is over. Remember, there was a dream team that went to France. And there was a picture that came at the peak of Zelensky's mania. He was crossing with these three advisors. And the allegation was that if he didn't know what was going on, then he'd have people around him that did. The caption on his Facebook page was the dream team. It was a statement that reassured those. That's just what I've explained. On the far left of the picture is Alex Danilyuk, a former finance minister. He's credited with helping clean up Ukraine's banking sector. He was at Zelensky's side through the later stages of the election campaign and after the vote given a powerful job in charge of national security. The man next to him in that picture, should probably show it. The BBC, when I turn to a bookmark, that it doesn't. This picture. So, there it is. The next man across is Ruslan Ryaboshapka. If I get any of these names, I'm really, well, I'm not that sorry. His background is in law and fighting corruption. He was handed the job of Prosecutor General, perhaps the most important of all the roles beneath the president. Ukrainian presidents have consistently used the Prosecutor General and his office as a tool to pursue their enemies and to reward their friends. I'm wondering whether he's the prosecutor that went after that journalist that Eva Bartlett I talked about the other day. Anyway, cutting corrupt deals with oligarchs in return for favourable TV coverage or a share of ill-gotten gains. It was a rotten heart of a rotten political system. This is how the BBC were reporting on Zelensky just 2 years ago. Mr. Ryaboshapka promised to be independent and different. He immediately embarked on an ambitious attempt to clean up the prosecutor's office. His appointment and Danilyuk's and several other well-respected reformers was seen by Ukraine observers, both home and abroad, as a clear sign that Zelensky is a puppet intended to try and deliver on his ambitious promises. You've probably guessed it by now, but the dream team didn't last long. Danilyuk stayed just 4 months. Ryaboshapka 7 months. They were gone. The reporter here met up with Danilyuk in Kiev. He resigned from Mr. Zelensky's team in September last year after falling out with the president's chief of staff, who was also now gone as well himself. Mr. Danilyuk told me he had no regrets about backing the former comedian and doesn't doubt his good intentions to desire to change things. So, can you imagine who's around surrounding Zelensky now? Yeah? If all these so-called Ukrainian, dream team have gone, they didn't do anything anyway, and they've left. Who's surrounding him now? Is it puppets from NATO? Is it people from NATO? I'm honestly asking the question seriously here. This is why I keep calling him a puppet. Mr. Danilyuk told me he had no regrets, the journalist who's writing this, about backing the former comedian and doesn't doubt his good intentions or desire to change things there. So what went wrong? Quote, he surrounded himself with very weak, opportunistic people, the guy said. The comedian brought with him incompetent people who now run major government institutions. It's same old then. Everything that he said that he was going to do when he came into the country, he didn't do, and he's actually gone the opposite way. Now he's banned 11 political parties, and he's banning TV stations and all sorts. A reshuffle at the start of March saw almost all recognised reformers purged from office. Among them, Mr. Danielu's fellow dream teamer, Rybashopka. He's now in France, so I caught up with him via Skype, and his assessment of what was taking place is bleak. Rybashopka tells the guy he had a big fish in his prosecutorial sight, meaning Ukraine's rich oligarchs, but that after initially backing far-reaching reforms and de-oligarchization, President Zelensky's puppet dramatically lost his nerve. Instead of choosing to fight the oligarchs, Mr. Rybashopka tells me with a sigh, he chose peace and consensus with them. Mr. Ivan Bakhanov was given the task of running Ukraine's SBU state security agency. On the right of the photo in Paris was Bakhanov. He's rather different from the other dream teamers. No one describes him as a reformer. Mr. Bakhanov is from the same southern Ukrainian town as Zelensky, this puppet, and a childhood friend. He used to run Zelensky's Puppet TV production company. Eyebrows were raised when Bakhanov was given the plum job of head of Ukraine's state security agency. A year on, and he's one of the few members of the Zelensky puppet administration to still have the same job. There were joyful scenes in December when Ukrainian prisoners flew back from Kiev. Zelensky puppet has packed a lot into the first year, and there are 4 to go. Yeah, now he's at war. He ran on an anti-war peace ticket. Plenty of people, particularly in Kiev, will tell you that it's heading towards inevitable disaster, that history will repeat itself and it will all end with street demonstrations. But for now, the wider public still appear to back their unlikely leader despite the setbacks. Well, that's possibly because, he banned any TV channels that were critical of him. And now he's banning any opposition parties. This does not sound like the workings of a great lion of a man, does it? That we're being portrayed now in the media. And then, of course, we come to this. The Pandora Papers. I think everybody's forgotten about this. So I'm just going to remind them of it. This is the key findings from the Pandora Papers. The Pandora, this is, I think, September 2021. So this is September 2021. This is just how many months ago? 8 now? 8 months ago, something like this. That's all that is. We found this out about Zelensky. He's a puppet. Just a few months ago. And everybody's forgotten about this seemingly in the media, who are telling you right now that he's some sort of lion and saying, is he single? The Ukrainian president rode to power on pledges to clean up the Eastern European country, but the Pandora Papers reveal he and his close circle were the beneficiaries of a network of offshore companies, including some that owned expensive London property. That's interesting, isn't it? London property. Beneficiaries. Are those oligarchs by any chance? Well, let's read on, shall we? Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, he's a puppet, and his partners in comedy production and a network of offshore companies related to their business based in the British Virgin Islands, Cyprus and Belize. All these offshore tax avoidance schemes, you know. Zelensky's current chief aide, Serhiy Shafir, as well as the head of the country's security service, were part of the offshore network. The security service, that guy that I just told you about, who was head of his security service, who is the only person from his inner circle that's still with him, Bakhanov, who came from his hometown. Join some dots here. Offshore companies were used by Shafir and other business partner to buy pricey London real estate. Around the time of the 2019 election, though, Zelensky, the puppet, handed his shares in a key offshore company over to Shafir. But the two appear to have made an arrangement for Zelensky's family to keep receiving money from those offshore companies. So he's handed it over to these offshore people, but they're still getting the money. And obviously, Ukrainian people aren't seeing it. I mean, how much money is here? How much? This is a lot of stuff for a comedian and actor to be involved in, isn't it? A lot of money here. Where did he get this from? Interesting. Didn't they get a loan from the IMF? Ukraine. 2015, billions. We'll come to that. Actor Volodymyr Zelensky stormed to the Ukrainian presidency in 2019 on a wave of public anger against the country's political class, including previous leaders who used secret companies to stash their wealth overseas. This is just like 8 months ago this was reported. Have they forgotten all of this right now on any channel that's telling you that this guy's the next Churchill? CNN put him in the same bracket as Churchill. I'll show you it in a bit. I just want to... No, I'll come back to it in a bit. So now, leaked documents prove that Zelensky and his inner circle have their own network of offshore companies, 2 belonging to the president's partners and used to buy expensive property in London. The revelations come from documents in the Pandora papers. Millions of files from 14 offshore service providers leaked to the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists and shared with partners around the world. The documents show that the president of Ukraine and his partners in a production company, a TV production company, Kvartal 95, set up a network of offshore firms dating back to at least 2012. The year that the company began making regular content for TV stations owned by Ihor Kolomoisky, an oligarch dogged by allegations of multi-billion-dollar fraud. The offshores were also used by Zelensky, his puppet associates, to purchase and own 3 prime properties in the centre of London. He's some anti-imperialistic guy, this Ukrainian president is, isn't he? Eh? He's some working class hero, isn't he, this guy? The documents also show that before he was elected, he gifted his stake in a key offshore company, the British Virgin Islands registered Multex Multi-Capital Corp, to his business partner. Just before he's elected, he gave his stake to a key offshore key offshore company to his business partner and soon to be his top presidential aide. And in spite of giving up his shares, the documents show that an arrangement was soon made that would allow the offshore to keep paying dividends to a company that now belongs to Zelensky's wife. I mean, there are no good guys here. I keep telling you all. There's no good guys. None. Don't lionize any of them. They're all awful, including our own leaders. A comedian and actor who had been famous since the 2000s, Zelensky began his political rise a few years after taking on a starring role in the political satire, quote, Servant of the People. I've just showed you that video from the BBC showing how he rose to power, which began airing on the Oligarchs Network in 2015. The show starred Zelensky, 2015, so that's just after the US-backed Maidan coup. Victoria Nuland, we know, conversation, back that up with evidence. Just after that happens, this programme comes up the year later. The show starred Zelensky, he's a puppet, as a humble history teacher whose anti-corruption rant in class is filmed by a student, goes viral, and then wins him the national office. in a case of life imitating art, Zelensky, he's a puppet, ended up winning the real-world Ukrainian presidency just 3.5 years later, after the show's launch, with more than 73% of the vote. Zelensky, puppet, capitalised on widespread public anger at corruption, but his 2019 campaign was dogged by doubts over his anti-graft bona fides, given that his campaign was boosted by media belonging to Kolomoisky, who was accused of stealing $5.5 billion from his own bank and funneling it offshore in concert with his partner Hennady Beholyubov. In the heat of the campaign, a political ally of incumbent President Petro Poroshenko published a chart on Facebook purporting to show that Zelensky, the puppet, and his television production partners were beneficiaries of a web of offshore firms that allegedly received $41 million in funds from Kolomoisky's private bank. That ally, Volodymyr Ariev, didn't provide evidence, and his accusations have never been proven, but the Pandora papers show that at least some of the details in his alleged scheme correspond to reality. The leaked documents show information on 10 companies in the network that match structures detailed in Ariev's chart. The new documents show that part of the network was managed with the help from Fidelity Corporate Services, an offshore consultancy that was one of the 14 firms whose documents made up part of the Pandora Papers leak. The documents show that Zelensky, who, as we've shown by now, is a puppet. And his partners use companies based in the British Virgin Islands, Belize and Cyprus. Two of Zelensky's associates in the offshore network, who were also, now hold powerful positions. Sergei Shafiri, Zelensky's top presidential aide, and Bakanov heads the security state of Ukraine, as I pointed out in the previous article. These powerful positions also come with risks. Shahir narrowly escaped an apparent assassination attempt, when his car was fired on outside Kyiv in September 22nd. He was unharmed, but his driver was wounded. Zelensky has repeatedly pledged to rein in oligarchs. The day after the attack on Shafir, the country's parliament passed a bill that would create a register of oligarchs and bar them from financing political parties or taking part in privatizations. Zelensky said that an attempt on Shafir's wife, that's going to really annoy people, isn't it? An attempt on Shahir's life will receive a strong response and will not influence his fight against vested interests. A spokesman for Zelensky decided to decline to comment. I'm sure the silence was the best way to respond to that, and Shafir and Bakanov did not respond to questions. Sergei Shafir's brother, Boris, who is partner owner of that Maltex multinational corp, said he may indeed be an owner, but was unaware of the details of the offshore arrangement. So his brother's like, yeah, he might be, but I don't know. Box of rats, we got our fingers in all sorts of pies. Ooh. The arrangement was largely the work of Ukraine's now security chief, Bakanov. Bakanov was our financial director. He set up the financial schemes of our company. Speaking honestly, I'm not ready to respond to you, he said. This is a giant cover-up, isn't it? Boris Shafir said such offshore arrangements were necessary because of the threat to the company of authorities and bandits. I'm just going to put my billions and what have you offshore in these companies because, the authorities and bandits will get their hands on them. What you mean? Taxis. Kvartel's 95 members were moving to divest themselves of offshores, but it was a slow and difficult process. Not very much anything's been done about it. It is unclear what most of the offshore network was used for. What have you got an offshore network for a TV show? Or a TV station, rather, that claim to fame is it's a TV show that the president became president because of, where life imitated art. Why have you got offshore multinationals doing... Come on. We know what this is, don't we? It is unclear what most of the offshore network was used for. I can stab a guess. I can hazard a guess at it. But a partial answer to the mystery can be found on London's Baker Street near the residence of another famous fictional character, Sherlock Holmes. Pandora Papers documents show a network company was used to purchase an apartment in London just a short walk from the museum that now stands at 221B Baker Street, the address of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's legendary detective. The area is one of several pricey parts of London favoured by foreign investors using anonymous shell companies. Why? Can I just ask, please, the obvious question here? Why are we asking, and why is our government asking the public to put up Ukrainian refugees where the puppet president of Ukraine's offshore companies owns multiple properties in London that could be housing those refugees instead, or sold, or anything? Why is it down to us to house them? It's insane, isn't it? That apartment, a 3-bedroom flat on Glentworth Street, was bought for 1.58 million quid. That's $2.2 million, $2.3 million in 2016 by a Belize company owned by Shafir, SHSN Limited, a 2-bedroom flat nearby in Baker Street, Chalfont Court Villa building, which was bought by Shafir for 2.2 million quid in 2014, and that was transferred to his company in 2018 too. So that is 3.8 million quid in 2 properties that these shell companies own in London. Those properties are going to be empty. I can guarantee you on it. I can guarantee you it. This is what oligarchs do. This is what these companies do. They just buy up properties. How many properties in these posh areas of London just are sitting empty? The documents also show that another Kvartal 95 shareholder, Andriy Lakovlev, obtained a roughly £1.5 million, $2.3 million apartment in the Westminster Palace Gardens building, a short walk from the Houses of Parliament, in 2015 after his BVI company purchased another BVI company that owned the property. That's another £1.5 million of property. How much we're up to now? We're in the 5 million mark now, just on 3 properties that they own in London. When contacted by a reporter, Lakovlev said, "Young lady, I don't speak with people I don't know. Contact our lawyers." Azarov, a Ukrainian lawyer who had worked for Zelensky and his partners, whose name appears on some of the documents found in the Pandora Papers, also declined to comment. Mid-election manoeuvring now. They'll go on to this. There is no sign that Zelensky himself was part of the London property deals. Of course not. There's always a buffer. You know, there's a lot of buffers in the mafia. There's a lot of buffers. At the centre of the web of foreign firms is Maltex Multi-Capital Corp, which has never before been linked to the president. By 2017, Maltex was divided equally between shell companies belonging to Zelensky, Lakovlev and brothers Serhii Shafir and Boris Shahir, Ivan Bakhanov, and another Kvartal 95 partner who now serves as Ukraine's secret police chief. Oh, come on. It's just put on... There's a reason I keep doing this. Zelensky, together with his wife, owned a quarter of Maltex through a Belize-registered firm called Film Heritage, but in 2019, the heat of Zelensky's election campaign made Film Heritage was transferred ownership to another company, but it's owned by Shafir. You know, it's just his mate. I'll transfer it to my mate. He can still keep sending me dividends. You know, the transfer documents were prepared by Azarov. The deal provided the Ukrainian president with a measure of distance from the offshore network while costing him nothing. They've figured out a way of doing it. This is not your anti-corruption guy, is it? This is not the guy who's stamping out corruption. Clearly, the share certificate demonstrates with no money that no money was paid by the receiving party. So he didn't sell the stuff to Shafir. He just transferred the stuff over. Therefore, the ownership was merely transferred from one name to another. It's all paper. It's all just a degree of separation, if you like, said Martin Woods, a financial crime consultant who reviewed the documents for the OCCRP. Roughly 6 weeks later, the same lawyer, Azarov, signed another document that stipulated that Maltex would continue to pay dividends to Zelensky's film heritage, even though it no longer owned a stake in the company. This is just this is a scam. This is a sham. This is just fraudulent behaviour that the oligarchs get away with on a daily basis. The stuff that he said, Zelensky said, he was going to stamp out. That's what he was saying he was going to do. And now, well, it seems he's owned wholly by them, doesn't it? The document, a client profile of Maltex prepared for Fidelity, disclosed that the company's 5 largest sources of revenue were Ukraine, Belarus, Russia, Belize and Cyprus. The Pandora Papers documents do not contain details on the size of any dividend payments, so we don't know how many millions the guy is getting from this. We just don't. We don't know. Like I say, how much is it? Seriously. How much has the guy got stashed away? Or how many payments have even been made since 2019? Zelensky's wife, Olena Zelenska, has been the sole beneficial owner of film heritage according to the online registry of officials' asset declarations, meaning any subsequent payments would have flowed to her. So it all goes through the family, you know? Financial crime consultant Woods said the share transfer was possibly a charade, aimed at hiding a stake in Maltex while still being able to make money off it. Possibly. I love how they put possibly in. The Ukrainian president has not mentioned Maltex in any of his public asset declarations, including one filed for 2018, when he still owned 25% of the company. So he's even hiding percentages, you know, in the public declarations. In such an arrangement, quote, the real owner has placed another person to act as his or her proxy to pretend to be a shareholder, Woods said. The person making the transfer wants to retain the shares and the benefit of the shares, but doesn't want the other people to know that that is the situation. Exactly. In response to questions sent by Pandora Papers reporters, Fidelity confirmed it was the registered agent for Maltex Multi-Capital Corp, but said that Zelensky... I'm going to do this one last time. Was not currently an owner or beneficiary of any company under its administration. Quote, the present Ukrainian president is not our client, nor does he have any ownership or any other position of any entity in our administration. But yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can say that, but that's not what we're charging, are we? We can see that he doesn't have this ownership. We can see what's happened here clearly. This is dodgy. The company also argued that there would have been nothing wrong to have worked for Zelensky prior to his ascent to political office in 2019. Quote, we don't see any valid reason why such a private citizen should be precluded from venturing into conduct his business internationally, including through a BVI, British Virgin Islands business company, if so deemed fit. The company did not respond to follow-up questions about Zelensky's other partners, as well as the transfer of his shareholding to Maltex Multi-Capital Corp to Shafir's partners. The documents in the Pandora Papers also contain details that dovetail with broader allegations of offshore machinations levelled against Zelensky and his partners during the 2019 election. During the campaign, the pro-Poroshenko member of parliament Ariev claimed that Zelensky and his partners were the beneficiaries of an offshore network of companies that received $41 million in payments that originated by Private Bank, the Ukrainian financial institute that oligarch Kolomoisky is alleged to have looted. Ariev's allegations were detailed in a chart he publicised on Facebook showing a complex web of transactions between layers of companies based in offshore havens included in the British Virgin Islands, Cyprus and Belize. The chart showed money flowing from the bank via a series of apparent shell companies to companies alleged to have been owned by Zelensky and his associates. So you can see how this allegedly is flowing out of this bank and into these companies that Zelensky looted. Ariev has not provided documents to back up his claims, and as I've pointed out before, he has provided other evidence to back this up. Or rather, they have seen other peripheral, circumstantial evidence that back up. I think that's fair to say that, to make sure that I'm getting things correctly, because I am trying to get things correct here. Okay? The leaked documents show an offshore network was set up by individuals in 2012, the same year that the media reported that Kvartal 95 entered into a production deal with Kolomoisky's 1+1 group. See how they're connected here. So yeah, I don't really think I need to go on any further on that. I'll just read the last part of it here. I know this is quite a long article, but I'm sure you'll agree. It's not the stuff that our mainstream media are telling you anymore, is it, about this guy? While they're sending me £100 million worth of weapons. Even as Zelensky pushes his anti-oligarch campaign, some continue to doubt his sincerity. Among them is Ruslan Ryaboshabka. He was picked up by Zelensky as the country's top prosecutor in 2019, but ousted from the role in early 2020. He told the LWCRP he believes this was due to pressure from the oligarch Kolomoisky. Quote, a president shouldn't own offshore companies. In general, offshore companies are bad. You shouldn't own offshore companies, okay? Offshore companies bad, okay? Whether they're owned by a president or not. He called moving money offshore an old tradition in Ukraine because the country was perceived as a dangerous place with no rule of law. But still, the use of such companies today raise red flags of tax evasion or the legalisation of dirty money, he said. That's the essence of offshore companies. I'm showing this is from the Pandora Papers, There's 336 politicians in the Pandora Papers, you may remember, that were recovered as having these offshore deals. 336 politicians. 38 of them, the most of any country, were in Ukraine. This is a corrupt country to the core, owned by oligarchs. This is not anything close to a democracy whatsoever. Don't think that sending missiles to Ukraine is somehow defending democracy. It's not. It's basically putting what it's doing by sending weapons to Ukraine, in my opinion, honestly, is putting 21st century technology, dangerous 21st century technology, which could start a world war, in the hands of absolute complete amateurs who don't know what the fuck they are doing. That's what it is. It's dangerous. And we're sending weapons, £100 million worth, I worked it out to. 100 million in weapons that the UK sent to Ukraine. Why are we sending him £100 million worth of weapons? Can we Can we say, okay, well, we need paying for them. We'll just take these buildings in Baker Street next to Sherlock Holmes' old place. Eh? Why are we sending this guy money if he's got hundreds of millions staffed offshore? I heard that he's got a rather large property in Florida. I'm not sure. I haven't seen the evidence to back it up. Why are we sending this guy weapons? Biden and America sent them 13.6 billion in aid. They called it aid. Lethal aid. Weapons. Like that. And then a day later, gifted another 800 million to it. So that's, I think it's gone up to 15 billion they've now sent in just the last 2 weeks. I don't think Flint has got clean water yet. Has it? I know Jordan Chariton's done great work on that. And the last time I saw, yeah, they still haven't got clean water. They were still, you know, drinking toxic stuff. But billions, thump, straight over to Ukraine. So fast you couldn't believe. Who do these people serve? You used to get headlines like this in the media. This is how, I'm going to read these headlines out for you. This is how the media used to cover Zelensky. Welcome to Ukraine. This is from The Guardian. Welcome to Ukraine, the most corrupt nation in Europe. This is from New Europe. Ukrainian president's rule becomes increasingly corrupt and authoritarian. Vox, the liberal outlet Vox. I wonder what headlines they're publishing about Ukraine now. They say a Ukrainian comedian turned president is embroiled in Trump's impeachment mess. Secret court document exposes state looting in Ukraine. IMF ranks Ukraine as Europe's poorest country. Hate crime against LGBT people in Ukraine. The attacks have become more and more organised. FPRI BNB Ukraine. Ukraine has more politicians in the Pandora papers than any other country in the world. And here's another headline. Ukraine's deadly profession. 3 journalists attacked in one day. And this from Reuters. Ukraine's neo-Nazi. What happened to those headlines? What happened to them? What happened to those headlines? Why did the headlines change? Now, something totally different. But September the 20th, this is from the CNBC. Another article, very similar to the Reuters one, to the OWCP, or whatever it's called, article that I read out. So I won't read this. I'm going to go through it, but I'll leave it on the screen for you as I flick through, so you can pause it and read it yourself. But here's a little bit. Here's a taster. Yeah, sod it. I'm going to read it to you. You need this information. You really do. Because it's interesting, isn't it, that there's billions, seemingly, certainly multi-millions going offshore out of Ukraine into these businesses that are abroad, that are buying up these properties in the centre of London. So where did the money come from? This is from CNBC. This is 2019. A bank scandal, an oligarch and the IMF. Ukraine's president has a lot to deal with right now. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is under pressure of how we resolve a long-running dispute regarding a nationalised bank and its former oligarch owner. How he proceeds could be a deal breaker. Ukrainian President Zelensky is under pressure on how he will resolve a long-running dispute regarding a nationalised bank and its former oligarch owner. How he proceeds could be a deal breaker as to whether Ukraine's international creditor, the International Monetary Fund, gives the country further much-needed aid programme, experts say. The dispute centres on a bank called Private Bank that was nationalised in 2016. It was the country's largest commercial bank, but became state-owned after being declared insolvent. the government bank renationalisation, which was seen as vital to protect the 20 million customers and to preserve Ukraine's already fragile financial system. A stress test of private bank had noted that imprudent lending policies, and Ukraine's central bank initially said that 97% of its corporate loans had gone to related parties of the main shareholders, Igor Kolomoisky and Gennady Bogolyubov. An assessment that both disputed. So this is that Kolomoisky that owns the TV company that created the show that Zelensky became president on, only for Zelensky to then run as president and win with this guy's backing. The IMF, which had given the Ukraine a $17.5 billion package in 2015, backed the nationalisation, but insisted earlier this year that it is important that the authorities continue their efforts to recover losses from former owners and related parties of failed banks. In early 2018, the central bank released the findings of an investigation by corporate investigative consultancy Kroll that said that prior to nationalisation, private bank had been subjected to, quote, a large-scale and coordinated fraud over at least a 10-year period, ending in December 2016. Again, Kolomoisky and the other guy denied the allegations. It's quite a read, this is. And I won't go into too much detail. As you can see, it was a long article. But if you look, you can find who this guy is. The people who told us who this guy is are the very same people who are now lionising him and calling him a hero. New York Times, this is now. What happened in the last few months? An unlikely hero, say the New York Times. Zelensky is not Churchill, he's more an unlikely hero. CNN. He's the New Statesman. Zelensky is a hero, but bravery alone won't defeat the Russians. It's quite amazing, isn't it, that they're doing this. I mean, if you go on Twitter right now, you can see what is happening in Ukraine is very similar to what happened in Syria when the West backed ISIS in Syria. I know, we backed ISIS. Yeah, we did. Not us, US. But when rule of law breaks down in countries that are in war, you get all sorts of things happening. Obviously, there's scared Ukrainians who want to feed themselves and have no way of doing it. So they're looting. They'll steal some stuff from stores to feed themselves, that sort of thing. They're being tied to posts and whipped by the Ukrainian forces. It is martial law over there. I mean, I saw one video. I'm not going to show it because I'll probably get my channel took down. But one video of one young girl, they tie them to the posts and they're stripping them naked from the bottom half down and just leaving them for the day. And every now and then somebody comes up and does God knows what and whips them. These poor girls crying. This is what ISIS do. ISIS tie criminals to posts and whip them. And it's happening now in Ukraine. And let's not talk about the neo-Nazi problem in Ukraine, shall we? You used to talk about it, the media did, but now they don't. And this is the latest. He now suspends 11 opposition parties, using the same rationale Putin invokes when doing so. This is now what the president's doing over there. They're subversive with ties to foreign enemies. That's what he calls them. And that's exactly what Putin does. That's exactly what any authoritarian does with any media that they don't like anywhere in the world. They say they're subversive, they have ties to foreign enemies, and that's it, they shut them down. One of the parties that he's banned here has 10% of elected seats in Ukraine's parliament. Kevork Almashian says this: Zelensky combined all national TV channels into one platform, banned all Russian-speaking media, banned 11 political parties, 18 parties in total, banned the Russian language, which is the mother tongue of more than half of the Ukrainian people. But somehow he's defending democracy. If you can manipulate the minds of the masses through the media, you can get the people watching to believe almost anything. And you can clearly see that this is what's happening here in Ukraine. I mean, the guy was on a reality TV show where his whole thing was anti-corruption, and he did a rant and somehow went and won the presidency. And it went and happened. The poor Ukrainians, I can only believe, they must be the most propagandized nation on the planet right now. And that's saying something, considering how bad we are being propagandized. I can't imagine what it's like in Ukraine right now, where you've only got one TV station. You've only got the words of the Führer. Anything else is fake news. Let's send him more weapons, shall we? This guy who's got all these millions hidden offshore, and who's part of this, offshore scheme to avoid tax and rape the wealth of the Ukrainian people. And it seems, I wouldn't be surprised, the IMF as well. I can almost guarantee you that 17.5 billion went nowhere near the Ukrainian people, and to do infrastructure and stuff. You must be joking. The US has sent about 15 billion to the weapons. Flint hasn't got clean water. Who benefits from us sending Ukraine missiles? How is missiles going to solve this? And why are our media manipulating our minds as badly as they are right now? There's some background on Zelensky. He's not the liberal hero the media are making him out to be. He's just not. Manipulating minds, that's really patronising. It's not, mate. That's what they're doing. It's what the media are doing, Supercoop. They're manipulating minds by only showing you half the story. If you only get the first half of the Cinderella story, you will think that Prince Charming is a weirdo with a foot fetish. That's how you can be manipulated. If you look at all cults do this sort of stuff where they say things over and over and over, you can find videos on how Scientologists do this. If you go to a Scientology, meeting, there's a guy here on TikTok who wore secret glasses that filmed a Scientology meeting, and it's indoctrination. They will say a lie over and over and over and over and over and over because they know that the human mind is fragile. Eventually, it will. It's not patronising. I'm just telling you the way it is. All right. So what is the reality of Zelensky in your view, says Pick Back Up? I think it's pretty clear. All right. Wow, was that segment an hour long? I did an hour on Zelensky. Wow, I did an hour on Zelensky. Oof. Okay. People like me often, in the current climate, whenever we're talking about stuff with regards to Ukraine or anything, I have to make the caveat, listen, whatever everything I say is not an endorsement of what Putin is doing. Okay? I've explained often enough now that I absolutely oppose what Putin is doing. This is a war of aggression, and it should be opposed like all wars of aggression should. He's not a good guy. There are no good guys in this situation. There are no good guys pretty much in any situation as far as I'm concerned when it comes to geopolitics. Because if you think that Biden and Boris Johnson are the good guys, then, well, you'd really hate to see the bad guys, wouldn't you? He's a gangster. He's Putin. He's a gangster. I'm reminded of the story. If you haven't heard this story, I'm going to tell it. I've forgotten the, you know what, should we find it? Should we find the story to back it up? Rather than me just, no, it's all right, I haven't got it loaded. But there's a story of an American footballer who, as a Super Bowl winner, and you know when American footballers win the Super Bowl, they get what's known as the Super Bowl ring. A big ring with like a ruby in it, like with the engraved. A big thing in America. Not many people have obviously got them. And one of these Super Bowl winners, I've forgotten his name now, went to Moscow and visited the Kremlin and met Vladimir Putin. And Putin was talking to him, was like, so you Super Bowl. You get ring. And he's like, yeah. Can I see? So Putin asked the guy for the ring. Can I see the ring? He takes the ring off and gives it him. And Putin just goes, walks off. And the guy's like, can I have my ring back, please? And as soon as he does that, the security put his hand in. No, sir. No. That ring is gone. Not your ring anymore. That's his ring. He's not a good guy. This is the gangster of all gangsters. So I want to show you what I think is the other side of the coin. Now, I obviously don't pursue this avenue too often because, well, this is what the mainstream media do, on a daily basis. I'm just showing you the other side of the coin that they don't see, you know. So Mehdi Hassan over at MSNBC did a segment on it. I want to show you it, and you can see here. He said, "Please watch. This is important." And I think it is important. To be fair, I think, well, you tell me what you think about this. This is worrying. It's 8 minutes, this is. I'm going to play it all so you get all the context. It's worrying. A lot of this is, I don't quite know what to make of it yet. Let me know what you think.
The Nazi conquest of Europe. That's how Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky described Russia's illegal invasion of his country in a speech to the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, today. He spoke as Russia continued its air assault, its forces firing on 8 cities in the Donetsk region in the east of Ukraine over the weekend, according to Ukraine's national police. And in the wake of Vladimir Putin speaking of victory and glory and vowing at what looked like a Trump-style rally on Friday in Moscow that Russia would win the war full stop. We've seen words like Nazism and fascism thrown around a lot in this conflict. So tonight, to understand what is going on in Ukraine right now, what is going on inside of Russia too, and what's driving Vladimir Putin, we need to talk about a man named Ivan Ilyin. He's important to all of this. Ivan Ilyin, born in 1883 in Russia to an aristocratic family, a graduate of law, who opposed the Bolshevik Revolution and soon became a right-wing anti-communist philosopher. Ilyin was exiled from the Soviet Union on the orders of Lenin himself in 1922. He went to Germany, where his mother was from, and soon became a fan of Mussolini, who had come to power in Italy that same year that Ilyin was exiled. It wasn't just Mussolini, though. He also quickly became an apologist for Hitler. In 1933, Ilyin backed the Nazi takeover of Germany, writing an article headlined "National Socialism, a New Spirit." In exile, Ilyin formulated a vision for a very Russian form of fascism, which he called redemptive. Fascism, of course, a far-right ideology centered on nationalism, militarism, and authoritarianism. Ilyin ended up leaving Germany before the war began and died in Switzerland in obscurity in 1954. Now, You might think a Russian exile who was an apologist for Nazism wouldn't have much support in Russia today, wouldn't be allowed to have much influence given what Hitler and the Nazis did to Russia. Tens of millions of Russians died during World War II, including in the siege of Leningrad and the battle for Stalingrad. Today, Moscow tries to justify its illegal war in Ukraine by falsely claiming they're once again fighting the Nazis. And yet, since the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of Soviet communism, Russian elites have been turning to Ivan Ilyin, the Nazi apologist, in increasing numbers. One particular Russian has led the campaign to rehabilitate this long-dead far-right philosopher. And his name is Vladimir Putin. In 2005, President Putin, who was obsessed with restoring Russia's imperial past, repatriated Ilyin's remains from...
I'd just like to point out here that Mehdi Hassan, whilst, you know, his allegations there he's got, you know, can back up. He never does it with the other side of the coin, does he? You know, somebody mentioned in the chat, when it was in Syria, he didn't say the other side of the coin. And obviously, with regards to the Nazi apology here, that he's saying, you know, that Putin has, well, I can show you video of people within Zelensky's inner circle and people who are on the Ukraine side right now invoking actual Nazis in their speeches. So Mehdi Hassan doesn't show you that. I am telling you right now, I'm showing you both sides here. I'm trying to give you truth. I'm trying to say to you, listen, don't get separated, don't get split into two camps. Because once you split into two camps, you're doing exactly what the powerful want you to be doing. They want to keep you separated. They want to keep you divided, because then they can conquer. This is why Mehdi Hassan can only report one side of things. If he does anything different to this, if he doesn't report the other side, if he reports the other side, he doesn't get a job on MSNBC. He doesn't get a chance to even do any, in his mind, good, I would think.
Switzerland to Moscow. And as columnist David Brooks of the New York Times has pointed out, on the same day that Putin laid flowers at Ilyin's grave in 2009, he declared, and I quote, "It's a crime when someone only begins talking about the separation of Russia and the Ukraine." Putin was echoing the Russian nationalism of Ilyin, who referred to Ukrainians in question marks, and who, in Yale historian Tim Snyder's words, believed that to speak of Ukraine was to be a mortal enemy of Russia. In 2006, Putin reclaimed for Russia Ilyin's personal papers from Michigan State University, where they'd ended up. According to Snyder, who has perhaps done more than any other scholar to cast a light on Ilyin's major and malign influence on Russian politics to this very day, quote, "By then, Putin was citing Ilyin in his annual presidential addresses to the General Assembly of the Russian Parliament. In the 2010s, Putin relied upon Ilyin's authority to explain why Russia had to undermine the European Union and invade Ukraine. When asked to name a historian, Putin cited Ilyin as his authority on the past. By 2014, the Kremlin was sending copies of Ilyin's writings to regional governors as well as Russian civil servants. And in 2015, an article in Foreign Affairs was referring to Ivan Ilyin as Putin's philosopher, while also describing him as a conspiracy theorist and a Russian nationalist with a core of fascistic leanings. So, question. If a fascist political philosopher is a guiding light and inspiration for the Russian president, what does that make Putin himself? Take a listen to what President Biden has called his Russian counterpart in recent days.
Oh, I think he is a war criminal. He's a murderous dictator, a pure thug who is waging an immoral war against the people of Ukraine.
Tough words. But one word Biden hasn't used so far is fascist. So let me lay it out for you as clearly as I can tonight. Putin, inspired and energized by a philosopher who has been dubbed a total fascist, is now himself behaving in a fascistic way. While obsessing over Nazis in Ukraine, Russia itself under Putin, with all of the cracking down on dissent and arrests of protesters and closing down of media organizations, has become, in the words of one Russian academic, a moderate fascist state.
Sorry, I was muted then. Is he saying any of this about Ukraine right now? Mehdi Hassan. He was talking about Russia shutting down TV stations there, wasn't he? Is he talking about Ukraine as well?
The cracking down on dissent and arrests of protesters and closing down of media organizations has become, in the words of one Russian academic, a moderate fascist state.
What is what Ukraine are doing now then? Do you see what I mean about, I'm showing you both sides here, but Mehdi's not, is he? I'm pretty sure that he won't be talking about what Zelensky's doing in banning these 11 political parties, none of which were neo-Nazi. He kept those, the only political parties now.
Now, what exactly do we mean by fascism?
Oh, by the way, RT, yeah, as somebody's just pointed out in the chat, RT much? And we had to properly shut down RT as well. The UK and US, we had to shut them down. I'm going to be covering a story about that after this, so stick around. But
fascism, a word that gets thrown around a lot, and which actually refers to more than just authoritarianism or despotism. Well, I want to put up a quote from Robert Paxton, the preeminent scholar and historian of fascism who literally wrote the book on this. And it's a long quote, but it's worth reading and considering in full, so bear with me. Fascism, he says, may be defined as a form of political behavior marked by obsessive preoccupation with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood, and by compensatory cults of unity, energy, and purity, in which a mass-based party of committed nationalist militants working in uneasy but effective collaboration with traditional elites abandons democratic liberties and pursues with redemptive violence and without ethical or legal restraints goals of internal cleansing and external expansion.
now, I'd like to just repeat that statement. Okay, this is what fascism is according to Mehdi Hassan, who he's invoking here. The well-respected approach of Robert Paxton, he says. Are you ready? Fascism is, quote, a form of political behaviour marked by obsessive preoccupation with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood, and by compensatory cults of unity, energy, and purity, in which a mass-based party of committed nationalist militants working in uneasy but effective collaboration with traditional elites abandons democratic liberties and pursues with redemptive violence and without ethical or legal restraints goals of internal cleansing and external expansion. How many countries has Russia invaded in the last 20 years? And how many countries has other countries invaded in that? How many countries actually do expand their budget? Which country has 800 plus military bases overseas? You see what I'm talking about here with... He's describing America there, not Russia. I mean, if you say, oh, a mass-based party, it's not really, it's Republican and Democrat, it's two wings of the same bird, perfect. You know they're working in conjunction with each other. That's pretty much America, if you ask me. But it just shows how blind the mainstream media is.
Let's just take that last line about goals. External expansion. Well, that's Putin's war in Ukraine.
What about your wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Somalia, Yemen? You bombed Somalia the same day as Ukraine was invaded. Are you that unaware of your country's own crimes? Or are you that absolutely spineless and shit scared that as a journalist you're afraid to tell the truth? God damn it, I can't even get through a segment where I'm trying to be nice to these people. They wind me up even when I'm trying to do them a solid.
content with Crimea and the Donbass, he's now trying to conquer the entire country. And internal cleansing? Well, listen to the man himself speaking direct to the Russian nation just a few days ago.
Internal cleansing. You know, I would just like to throw back all the racist rhetoric that not just Donald Trump has been involved in over the last few years, but your own President Biden. Even in his campaign, he was saying stuff like, "You ain't black if you don't vote for me." I can point to multiple instances in the past of him being clearly racist. Black people are just as educated as other Americans, he said, or American. What was it, the real quote? But all the fingers go over at Putin. Where's the self-reflection? Don't you understand that the media, in not doing their job here and not holding the feet to the fire of the elite, the powerful, of him not doing this sort of stuff, not just at Putin, but his own government as well, and his own Democrats, that's the reason why things have got so bad. It wouldn't have got to this situation. It wouldn't have got this bad, where literally nothing you hear anywhere can be... How do you believe anything? How does a normal person believe anything that's going on at the moment? There's that much bullshit. This is how it gets to this stage, because people like Mehdi Hassan don't do their goddamn job and haven't for a long time. Because they're either quite happy to be taking the money and to sit on the gravy train as we all go into annihilation, or they're too spineless that they haven't got the guts to stand up and say the goddamn truth. It's so annoying.
Когда сможет отличить истинных патриотов от подонков и предателей и просто выплюнет их, как случайно залетевшую в рот мошку, выплюнет на панель. Убежден, такое естественное и необходимое самоочищение общества только укрепит нашу страну.
If that stuff sounds scary to you, that's because it is. That speech?
There's no doubt it is, Mehdi. There's no doubt at all. And that's why I'm showing this today. It's really worrying what you're pointing out. It is. But you're pointing it out in a very one-sided way. There are no good guys here. You should not be picking sides in this. NATO has a big part to play in this. And you guys are not talking about that at all. It's the reason it got this bad.
Was pure, unadulterated fascism, as was the nationalist garbage he was spewing to a massive fascist-style rally in Moscow on Friday, celebrating the 2014 illegal Russian annexation of Crimea.
Literally every rally in America is a fascist-style rally. Literally every rally in America is a fascist-style rally. Every single one of them. They've all got the flags out, the military going overhead, the goddamn college football matches look like fascist-style rallies in America. How you can sit there and be pointing the fingers at another country where your own kids have to recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag every goddamn morning is absolutely insane to me. Are you that much of a vampire that you do not see your own reflection?
And look, if you are a regular viewer of this show, you'll know I've spent the past year talking a great deal about the F word, about fascism in the context of American politics, and the rise of Trump, and the authoritarian tendencies of the modern Republican Party. But
it's just Trump though, right? It was just Trump. It wasn't anything else. It wasn't the system or anything like that. You haven't got a racist system of you know, basically slavery, where you incarcerate 25% of the world's population but only have 5% of its people. That pretty much all of your weapons for and stab vests for the police, etc., are made by people in prison. Should we start talking about that and how that can be, you know, thought of as a fascistic enterprise, shall we, Mehdi?
We need to recognize that over in Eastern Europe, we are facing a fascism of a much worse, much more violent, and much more brazen kind.
Mate, you need to really look closer to home. Seriously. You need to open your eyes and look closer to home, mate. Biden is a better Trump than Trump. What has Trump done that Biden's reversed? Nothing. Nothing. All those racist things that he did on the border, kids in cages and all that rubbish, do you remember? None of it has changed. None of it.
In Russia, a fascism that is embodied right now by Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, and which is inspired and informed at every step of the way, as Tim Snyder points out, by one Ivan Alexandrovich Ilyin. Quoting Snyder, Putin has used Ilyin's ideas about geopolitics to portray Ukraine, Europe, and the United States as existential dangers to Russia.
There you go. Let me know what you think of that. What do you make of that? It's worrying. Some of the stuff in there is really worrying. This rhetoric is obviously really worrying. Putin is not a good man. He's a gangster. But I wish politicians like I wish so-called journalists and talking heads like Mehdi just found some balls for once in their goddamn life. I saw him the other day, this Mehdi Hassan. He was on Twitter, right? And he was complaining about the Palestinian contingent in the Knesset in Israel voting against sending aid, weapons to Ukraine. Just like 3 weeks ago, Puppet Zelensky was on a Zoom call to the Knesset saying that what Ukraine is doing right now is very similar to what the IDF are doing with Palestine. Saying that he's saying we're the same as Israel, basically. So the Palestinian contingent in the Knesset went, to hell with you then. To hell with you. If you think that's the case, sod you. And Mehdi Hassan used his platform to have a go at the Palestinian contingent in the Knesset for not supporting sending weapons to Ukraine. Can you believe this crap? These people get paid fortunes to spoon feed you bullshit and face no repercussions whatsoever. They fail upwards. Support independent media. We need your help. We really do. Because Lockheed and Raytheon and Boeing that have their advertisements on MSNBC that pay Mehdi Hassan's wages, we haven't got that money. We don't get funding from the NED like Bellingcat do. $1 a month, please. That's all we need, really. If enough of you do it. £1 a month, whatever you can afford, please. You can see we're being silenced. You can see our voices are being crushed, and you can see why. You can see whose voices are being elevated, and you can see, as Russell Brand pointed out at the top of this stream, that politicians and the powerful and the corporations are colluding with each other, clearly, to do something extremely nefarious. That's why we need your help, because people who are talking about it, their voices are getting silenced. What's next? Oh. Okay, this story I'm going to tell you now is one of the It's one of the saddest things I've ever heard. So, this story is heartbreaking, everybody. And I can't believe how angry I can, actually. Let's just go to it. This story is heartbreaking. A black girl strip searched at school. Can't go a day without wanting to give up. And you know what that means, to give up. You know, Finn. A traumatized black girl who police stripped naked and searched for cannabis while at school and on her period says, quote, she can't go a day without wanting to give up. Gee, I wonder why. Oh, this is horrific. The 15-year-old girl, known only as Child Q, was strip searched by Metropolitan Police officers who wrongly suspected her of carrying cannabis at school in Hackney, East London. Both her school and the Met are now facing a public outcry. Is that all? A public outcry? That's it? That's all they face? I think they need to face a little bit more than that, don't you? Both her school and the Met are facing a public outcry, with protesters gathering outside Stoke Newington police station yesterday to demand justice for the youngster. They won't even tell you which school this was, because obviously the school got the police in. So they won't even tell you which school this was, because honestly, if people knew, I think it would probably just get burnt to the ground. Since Child Q's traumatic ordeal was made public, Scotland Yard has issued an apology for the, quote, truly regrettable. Yeah, it's truly regrettable that we strip searched that school naked while she was on her period and made her squat and cough on the... Yeah, I know. Made her squat and cough. It's truly regrettable incident which they confirm should not have happened. Well, that's good to know. It's good to know that the Metropolitan Police think that strip searching a 15-year-old girl naked whilst on her period because they think she's got cannabis is, you know... Strip searching 15-year-old girls for cannabis is bad, okay? Yesterday, the girl who is taking civil action against the Met issued a statement through her lawyers, thanking the thousands of people across the world for their support and saying she knows I am not alone. To you, I think this is a couple of years ago, she's probably 17 now. Bless you. Bless you. I wish you all the happiness in the future, and I hope somehow you get through this and maybe even try and turn it into a good thing. That I don't know. I wish you all the best for the future, and to this scum who not only the police officers who did this, not only that, but anybody in the room or vicinity or anywhere near this woman who did not stop it from happening. The police would have had to shoot me to stop them strip searching this girl if I was a teacher at that school. They would literally have to drag me out by my hair, handcuffed, to stop me protecting that little girl. If I was one of those teachers. How the hell can they not only stand by whilst this is happening, but actually call the police in the first place? It boggles the mind. As part of the local child safeguarding practice review, which concluded racism was, quote, likely to have been an influencing factor. Oh, no shit, Sherlock. In the strip search, Child Q recalled the events of December the 3rd, 2020 in harrowing detail. Child Q said, quote, someone walked into school where I was supposed to feel safe, took me away from the people who were supposed to protect me and stripped me naked while on my period. On the top of preparing for the most important exams, this is exam year. On top of preparing for the most important exams in my life, I can't go a single day without wanting to scream, shout, cry, or just give up. I feel like I'm locked in a box and no one can see or cares that I just won't go to bat feeling safe again. My box is collapsing around me and no one wants to help. Darling, every single person watching this right now wants to help you. I promise you that. I don't know if I'm going to feel normal again. I don't know how long it will take to repair my box, but I do know this can't happen to anyone ever again. All the people that allowed this to happen need to be held responsible. I was held responsible for a smell. And I'm just a child. She just smelled of a plant. A 15-year-old black girl smelt of a plant. So the authorities in the school phoned the Metropolitan Police, and the Metropolitan Police came out to the school and stripped a 15-year-old girl naked while she was on her period, made her squat and cough to prove that she hadn't stashed those drugs, those illicit, harmful drugs, wherever. I heard a story that they wouldn't even let her go to the toilet to put a clean sanitary towel back on. They made her put the dirty one back on. Can you believe this is happening in the United Kingdom? But of course, when you've got Metropolitan Police raping and killing women, well, I mean, this is a little bit better than that, isn't it? Nobody got killed. Well done, Met. There was protests over this, and of course there was. Diane Abbott, who's the MP for Hackney, was out there on Sunday, bless her. Good on you. I've been hard on you in the past and you deserve some credit for taking to the streets, but this has got to stop. I can't believe this is happening. To everybody who's watching right now, I want to try and explain to you just how bad this is, all right? To everybody who's watching, and to anybody who's watching who doesn't think this is bad and thinks the Metropolitan Police were just doing their job, to them especially, I want you to do this, okay? Are you watching? To anybody who thinks that this isn't a bad thing and who thinks that I'm wrong for doing this, I want you to just do this exercise with me, okay? Close your eyes. All right? I want you to imagine a little girl sitting in assembly at school or somewhere at school and having a teacher accuse you of having drugs, and you say, I don't have any drugs on me. And then I want you to imagine this little girl be dragged out of school to a room by police officers that were called by those teachers who were meant to protect them, and make her strip naked. Can you see her as she strips naked, crying? Can you see her as she squats down on the floor and is made to cough while she's on a period? Can you see this little scared 15-year-old girl? Can you see how afraid and how petrified she must have been? Can you see her? Can you? With those Metropolitan Police officers standing around her. Can you see her? Now imagine she's white. This has to stop. This would never happen to a white kid. Not in a million years would that happen to a white kid in this country. It just wouldn't. For all of you people who say that this country is not inherently racist, think about that. Just think about it. We have been propagandized by pictures from the powerful since birth. The stuff they want us to believe, it gets in. It infects our minds, it really does. How many of you go on a plane, and when you're sitting on a plane, even though you're not racist, how many of you still look round and go, there's a terrorist, I wonder which one it is? And how many of you pick out the Muslim? I do. I'm not racist, but I'll put my hand. I do that. How it's because of the stuff that we've been just saturated with since birth, and especially in the last 20 years. Wow. We can't go anywhere right now without it coming into our... We've got the phones. Our minds are almost attached to them. And they control it all. They control what we see, what we hear, what advertisements they are sold. And now we've got a society that stands aside and has a police thinking that strip searching a little girl on her period is okay, and that somehow, yeah, we're not a racist country. We clearly are. And I think we all have to start taking some responsibility for it and start asking for some, new way forward. Because clearly, if we carry on doing the shit that we've done, more 15-year-old black girls are going to get traumatized like that for the rest of their lives. All right, okay. I promised you I was going to talk about RT, didn't I? Because over in America, RT have been banned, and it's the same in UK. They've had their license stripped away. They've gone. They couldn't regulate them. They've given no reason for it other than spreading propaganda. But they can't specify what it is that RT have done wrong. They can't, say, oh, you're spreading fake news, and then point the finger to any fake news that they've spread as a reason to get rid of them. They've been trying to get rid of RT for ages over in the US and over here, because the journalists on RT in the US are American and UK journalists who pretty much have been kicked off the mainstream media for telling the truth about the UK and US. So they've had to go to RT. The UK and US have been trying for ages to get RT banned. They couldn't do it. Even though we have Ofcom over here, couldn't find anything that they'd done that's bad enough to ban them. Wrap their knuckles a couple of times, that's it. But when you look at the propaganda spewed out by the BBC, you wonder how, RT are not the worst people here. For sure. We had to ban them. In the end, RT... Every journalist I've ever heard work for them has said, I wrote everything. Lee Camp says I wrote everything that I ever said on that program. I never had anybody tell me I've got to do anything. And I've heard other people say similar. But the UK and US had to ban RT and kick them out of the country. In Russia, however, it happened a little bit differently. Because the BBC and CNN have left. have left Russia. They weren't banned. They went, we're here. The BBC, CNN and others are suspending operations and halting their broadcast in Russia after Putin pushes a fake news law. So, this is beautiful, but it's serious, okay? But I'm making light of it, I know. So he's made this fake news law now. He's brought in a punishment and you could go to prison You can go to prison in Russia now if you publish fake news, and immediately as that happens, the BBC, CNN and Bloomberg all went, okay, that's us, see you Vlad, we're out of here, Whoop, we packed our shit up and we're gone. They just, poof, see ya, we're not hanging around for this. Several major news organisations, including BBC and Bloomberg, have suspended operations in Russia. The move comes after Putin introduced a censorship law that severely cracks down on press freedom. Really, does it? Where's Julian Assange right now, CNN? You don't want to talk about that, do you? Oh no, best not. Keep talking about how bad Putin is. Under the proposed law, journalists who characterise the Ukraine invasion as a war could be jailed. What about journalists that prove that war criminals in America are war criminals? What happens to them? Do they go to the jail? Do they go to jail in Belmarsh without charge, do they, for 3 years? And 7 years in arbitrary detention before that? Have you covered that by any chance, CNN? Major news organisations on Friday announced that they're suspending their operations or halting their broadcast in Russia as President Vladimir Putin cracks down on the free press and his troops advance in their assault on... I'm not going to read the rest of this, Rob Bollocks. I'm just not. It's CNN, but... Yeah, so Putin made fake news illegal in Russia, and the CNN, BBC and Bloomberg all went, okay, well, that's it for us then. See ya, bye. And left. There's one last thing I want to talk about, by the way. This has gone viral on Twitter. This is Martin Lewis on the cost of living crisis that's going on at the moment. Obviously, many people in the UK, they're worried about their energy bills. Mine's gone up 40%. We're in the shit. All right? We're in the shit right now, big time, and it's going to get worse. Listen to Martin Lewis, what he says here. This is important.
Look at the fact that just on energy alone, on a conservative estimate within 1 year, we're talking £1,300 a year going up in bills. We're going to have about 10 million people in fuel poverty. We have a real absolute, not relative, poverty issue going to come in the UK, with food banks oversubscribed, with debt crisis agencies do not have any tools. And I need to say, with the Chancellor coming on in a moment, if you forgive me, as the money-saving expert who's been known for this, I am virtually out of tools to help people now. It's not something money management can fix. It's not something for those on the lowest incomes telling them to cut their belts will work. We need political intervention. Look at the fact the measures the Chancellor have put in place are £150 on council tax to those in Band A to Band D. That will hit in April, when we're seeing...
It's going to get worse. This is... I know, I keep muting myself, don't I? I'm sorry about that. It's going to get worse.
£700 year-on-year rise. And then the £200 loan, not loan system that comes in October, which polling we've done via YouGov suggests around 57% of people would choose to opt out of if they could, because they don't like the gamble on energy prices. Only around 26% would opt into it. But even if you take both of those measures and you were to pretend both were cash, that is £350 to cover a typical £1,300 a year bill.
So what he's saying is our fuel prices are going to be going up by the end of the year £1,300, and so far the government have offered a £150 grant to us all, and then a £200 loan, which we'd have to pay back, which is £350. So even if you actually look at that £350, it's a £1,300 rise we're looking at. Everybody, you know, that's £100 a month we're worse off. And he's about to explain, this is almost like a poll tax. This is because the rich pay less money than we do. Not much less, but a little bit less, because obviously they pay up front, whereas the poor people are on a meter like me, and they have the more expensive tariff. Kind of messed up, isn't it? But
£1,300 a year increase. That is clearly not enough. Now, some people can shoulder the burden, and we do have to shoulder some of the burden. This is a market, and For years, we've had a market-based system. That's not a choice I will get into. I'll leave that one to politicians. But within our market-based system, there are many people who will not be able to afford a £1,300 a year ride.
A market-based system. They've been making billions. These companies that he's explaining here, a market-based system, have made billions throughout the pandemic. They keep making money and the price is going up now, and so they're just going to put the price up and make even more money now. How is any of this fair?
Especially with only £350 worth of help. And it is worth remembering energy bills tend to be regressive. The difference in what the very highest users pay, the very richest pay compared to what the poorest pay, isn't that big. It's pretty flat. It's almost a poll tax. So for those people on lower to middle incomes, a 350 quid worth of help, of which £200 is questionable, to cover a £1,300 rise, well, you don't need to be the money-saving expert to work out, no, that is not enough.
Thank you for that. And in terms of what the government could be doing to support households, and particularly those who are vulnerable, have you got any suggestions?
Well, it needs to give them more money. And it really is as simple as that.
No, I think we should send more weapons to Ukraine instead. What do you think? Yeah, that sounds good to me. Got shares in Raytheon and Boeing. Great stuff. Great job. Good thinking, Charles.
One of the things we've got into this debate of where the money comes from, and there's a suggestion of cutting VAT. To be honest, that isn't enough, and cutting VAT will help me. I'm a wealthy man. I don't need the help. I want it put at the lower end of the schedule. So there's lots of places you can choose to get the money. You can get it from general taxation. You can get it from borrowing. You can get it from windfall taxes. I will leave that to macroeconomists. As a consumer finance expert, I will say we need to pump more money into the system, or we need a vulnerable customer price cap, which will have to be funded somehow, that means that vulnerable customers don't see these rises. The rocket science is not how we fix it. You fix it by making people's bills cheaper. It's having the political will to get that done, and others will have to work out how it's paid for. I'm afraid that's not my expertise.
So there you go. Yeah, we're up shit creek without a paddle. And yeah, Martin Lewis says the government needs to give the people more money. That's the solution, he said. Personally, I think I know the solution to this. I think we should send some weapons to Ukraine and go to war with Russia. Whoa. These energy companies are making a fortune. And they have been for decades. We can't go on like this. Can we? It's not going to end well, is it? Something needs to happen. It needs to happen soon. But unfortunately, the people in charge are more concerned with maybe starting World War III at the moment. Who knows? Then sorting out the energy crisis in this country. All right, that's me done for the day. Actually, everybody, I'll be back probably on Friday now. I've got to shoot. That's why I've come down early, because I've got to shoot out. I've got transport. Let me just check, make sure I have not received any super chats. I don't think I have. Yeah. So basically what I wanted to show you is the whole thing with regards to Zelensky, to give you some background on him. It wasn't that long ago that the media were, slagging him off at any opportunity that they could, with all these millions offshore in the the Pandora papers or whatever it is. There's no good guys here. There really isn't. Zelensky's not a good guy, clearly. Putin is not a good guy, clearly. We shouldn't be picking sides in this. We really shouldn't. And we certainly shouldn't be provoking this conflict over there, because we really could get into a third world war. And if that happens, it's fin. There is no, nothing else. There's nothing after the war when that happens. That's it. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for everybody who supports me. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for all you people, you lovely people on TikTok that have endured this without any of the pictures behind me. I will be. Thank you, Darren Levy, who's just sent through a super chat. He says, "Do you think things will change in the UK after local elections and the midterms in America?" I think the only way things will change, Darren, is with mass, and I mean mass movements of people who are engaging in non-violent civil disobedience on a scale with which the planet has never seen before. Our salvation does not lie in elections. Keir Starmer, whether Keir Starmer gets in or whether Boris gets in or whether, you know, Biden gets another term or whether Trump, it doesn't matter. Your salvation cannot be found in these political parties. They are not in it for you. They're in conjunction with, you know, the corporations and power and big business, and they're not working in your benefit, clearly. Over in America, they are, you know, there's people under bridges, under every bridge in America, whilst they're sending billions to Ukraine. Flint still hasn't got clean water. We're strip searching 15-year-old girls who are on their period because they smell a weed. That's how messed up we are. We need a new system, clearly, because the people that we have elected, the people that we have given power to, the people that hold our sovereignty in trust, have given it away to foreign powers and oligarchs. You know, why is old Martin Lewis there on TV talking about how, you know, where are the government going to find this money? Well, I mean, Zelensky's got, and his pals have got, millions in property in London. Why aren't we, you know, seizing that, considering, well, it's clear that it's been got through a scam with that bank. Don't you agree? All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, for your support. Thank you, everybody who does support independent media. I'll be back, I think, on Friday or the weekend. I don't know. I shall, yeah. I'll see you all soon. Take care. Free Julian Assange. All right, everybody, that's me out.